So I'm back with Barbara. We lost the last 45 minutes of our wonderful recording, and I've since had a haircut next door. We're back to revisit the last 45 minutes that we talked about. You had just brought us up to your home health job, and your kids were mostly out of school. Now that was in, were we in Michigan now?
That was in Michigan.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then what?
Well, I was working med-surg geriatrics, and I had to relearn all of that nursing care. And so then after that, after the kids got out of school, I had one left at home. I went back to school myself, and I became a women's health nurse practitioner. So
where did you do school?
I went to Seton Hall. It was an online program.
Oh. And we're talking 80s now, or what roughly date?
You know, I've had, no, 2000 and, yeah, this is later on. 2006 is when I graduated. So I was DONA president from, I'd have to count backwards. I was Lamaze president from 2002 to 2004, Kim's chair for 2 years before that, and then DONA president 2 years before that.
And for our viewers, DONA is the Doula Organization of North America.
It's the Doulas of North America.
And
now it's international.
And
DONA International.
They probably wouldn't know what Lamaze is. And I think that we hadn't talked about KIMS in the first part. So at the risk of repeating ourselves, that's the Coalition for Improving Maternity Services, which was the organization that brought us together.
Yes.
And we produced the Mother Friendly Childbirth Initiative, which
I had worked with, I was representing DONA at these KIMS beginning meetings where they were getting people together at a conference and saying, okay, so what do you think belongs in this step? What do you think belongs in this step? And they were just getting ideas from everybody in, you know, different areas of the country by going to different conferences. So I became involved with KIM, the DONA representative to KIMS. DONA supported KIMS financially and in some ways, and that's how I got involved in KIMS, and that's how you and I met.
Right, which is probably one of the meetings in Orlando, I think, that we had follow-up meetings, because the the steps of the Mother Friendly Childbirth Initiative. There are 10 steps. We'll just fill in the viewers. I'm going to put a link to it next to the link to you, and in this section how we met. But we also brought in the Baby Friendly Hospital Initiative that we talked about last time, and how those 10 steps became the 10th step of the Mother Friendly, which we added. We came along and were inspired by that. And what was interesting is you were telling me, I remember there were like 5 or 10 hospitals that had become baby friendly back in '96. It was pathetic. And now it's growing. You said that you've got the local hospitals there are close to it, and say a little more about that.
It has been growing steadily. And when the time that you're talking about, in Europe, there were many. There were like 200 baby-friendly hospitals, and just not even a handful here. So yes, KIMS wanted to highlight the fact that to be, you know, a mother-friendly hospital, then or birth center or home birth practice, that you needed to honor the breastfeeding as well.
Yes.
And now the hospitals compete, and they compete on different things. And in my area of the country, in Chapel Hill and Durham and Raleigh, the hospitals are being competitive with the baby friendly. They are like UNC Chapel Hill became baby friendly maybe 5 years ago and was designated. It's hard work. And now Duke has 5 of the 10 steps and is pursuing that. And the community hospital where I take my nursing students is now trying to get designated as baby friendly as well.
Wonderful. Now, the mother-friendly status, I remember we worked a lot on how to get that implemented, and we had questionnaires, and you were a big part of that, as I recall. Where did that wind up?
Oh, we had a pilot study. We had it for 2 years, and we did designate a place in Washington State, and I cannot remember the name of the hospital. Also, a birth center in Taos, New Mexico.
Oh, yes. Went there once.
Yes, and they, the hospital worked really, really hard to get it. They had a lot of people in charge of it, and then support of it. And then there was a changeover of people. And when we contacted them for recertification, redesignation, they said we wouldn't qualify. There's been such a change, and all the good that happened from that is just gone. Taos, New Mexico, on the other hand, they live and breathe the essential components of mother-friendly. And so it was their culture before we even came to them. So that they have lasted.
But beyond the pilot study, it never really took off to get in the mainstream.
What happened was that we were trying to unite with Baby Friendly and say, would you like to work together on this? And they said, it's hard enough for us to do what we're doing without adding something else to it.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw the designation process of requiring more money, more administrative staff than we had. And we chose not to go ahead with it because we couldn't make it happen. We would have to convince hospitals for us to come in and basically look at their charts, talk to their patients, talk to their staff and their
they wouldn't like that.
Medical providers. No.
Wow. So then Kim's merged with another organization, neither of which we could remember their name. I think they're out of New York, weren't they?
I think it's Rebecca Thompson. Let me look it up on my phone, my pocket computer. No, they didn't merge. What they did was they did merge. We
or we got some.
I'm not gonna look it up now. Okay, so what happened was that we had a change in leadership, and leadership felt that we should merge with this association because they had a lot to offer, and we would also be merging with with another group of childbirth advocates. And actually what it did was there was no longer a coalition. There was no longer a meeting of people coming together, working on it in their own venues. through the coalition. And so now the information is up. You can find it on, you can maybe even go to motherfriendly.org, but there is no Kim's, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know motherfriendly.org is still there. I actually set up the first website and bought the domain for us, and then it got
Yes, you did.
taken over, because back in those days we could barely do email in '96.
I know.
My job to harass the 40-some people to ratify it with Roberta's help. I turned into the harasser. It was July 4th, I think, '96, that we actually got the quorum that we needed. But and you were also saying that I was under the impression that home births were decreasing, but you said they're actually increasing in birth centers in North Carolina anyway. And I also forgot to mention you're in Michigan visiting your son. That's why you're when we introduced you in Ann Arbor, but you're really a North Carolina girl, and we'll be back there soon.
Really a Tar Heel, yeah. Yeah, and so North Carolina is, I've seen other states who have been able to legislate certification, well, not the certification, but the licensure of certified professional midwives. And I don't know if I explained this in the part that we have, but I'll go ahead and explain it again.
No, you haven't. Let's go and do that, please.
Okay, so there are
CPMs.
certified professional midwives, there are certified nurse midwives, there are nurse practitioners, and there are physician assistants. So physician assistants get the same training as nurse practitioners, but not through a nursing school. Certified professional midwives get midwifery training in a different school than certified nurse midwives who get it through nursing schools. So our legislature in North Carolina, our medical society refused to license certified professional midwives. These were the midwives out in the rural areas. These were the ones who were giving care to women. In North Carolina, the number one reason for maternal fetal death was lack of prenatal care. And you can understand that when prenatal care helps moderate some of their medical problems, like maybe diabetes and high blood pressure, anemia. So when you don't have adequate prenatal care, that makes you really high risk for birth. And these certified professional midwives were the only ones providing this kind of care in the rural areas of North Carolina. And then they said, you can't practice, and if you practice, we're going to haul you into jail. And they did haul some midwives into jail. It was very torturing to see this develop. The medical society said that in a meeting with North Carolina Friends of Midwives, that the reason they were sorry they ever licensed physical therapists. Can you imagine? As a nurse practitioner, I would send people to a physical therapist because they could assess and diagnose and maybe treat, and if not, we would refer them on to a surgeon. But there was no reason for surgery if you could do it without.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's the same way it is for midwives. If they know, they assess, they know when to refer, they know when to get the people to the hospital, but they can largely take care of most births, because it's only like 5 to 10% that are really troublesome births.
Right. So then what's happened with home birthing in North Carolina if they're not certified?
We have maybe 5 certified nurse midwives who attend home births. but a lot are going into the birth centers, which have grown. We had, when I came in, when I came back 10 years ago, there was 1 or 2 birth centers. Now there are 6.
Mm-hmm.
So it's promising.
Do you think that's true across the country, or is North Carolina more progressive?
Oh, no, North Carolina is not the most progressive. It is truer across the country than it is
Good.
in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we were talking about all of your various irons in the fire, from Dona to Lamaze to Kim's.
Yeah.
That you have been a real mover and shaker. As I guess they know a sucker when they can get you to be.
Oh, can you see the S tattooed on my on my forehead?
Yes, tell us again how you rose to the top.
Well, it's sort of a joke, but it's mostly true that I'm an organizational slut. So for 17 years, I was at home with my 5 children, and before I had to go back to work, because my husband taught an hour away, and the kids were 14 years apart in age from the oldest to the youngest. So during that time, I joined DONA, and I became membership chair, and that put me on the board. And so I worked with DONA in their startup years, and then in DONA, I represented DONA at KIMS. And KIMS, we got DONA to donate some money every year to KIMS, and we were trying to get a lot of organizations to do that. So I was a representative there, and I went to the startup meetings of KIMS that were held at the conferences around the United States. And at each one of them, they would talk to these people about, and us, about KIMS, what they'd hoped it would do, and also that we were going to put out an initiative, a KIMS initiative, and that would state what we knew to be true about physiological birth, woman-centered birth, mother-friendly birth. What?
A normal birth.
Normal birth and mother-friendly birth. And so they were developing the document, and then they went to, where did you say in California?
We were at Mount Madonna Center when we did
Mount Madonna, yes.
Yeah.
And I think I've erased that from my mind because I was so sad I couldn't go, but I had to work. And so other people from DONA represented us, like Penny Simkin and Phyllis Klaus and Marshall Klaus. And so we went to Mount Madonna, and there the document was pretty much complete. I think there's only minor editing due after that.
Hammered it out. Yeah.
Hammered it out, and then we started having coalition meetings and bringing people together.
And Orlando is where I think I met you the next year, because I just moved to Virginia, and we drove down to Orlando and met you and Sharon Humanick. And
yeah.
So you mentioned, I don't know if all the viewers will know that it was Klaus and Kennel's publication that, didn't they conclude if a drug was as effective as a doula, that it would be all over, no question, everyone would get that drug.
Yes.
The statistics were just overwhelmingly better for doula.
They have been ever since. And that was that whole thing that I think we were talking about at one point in this talk that we're having, is that it's the support. It's the continuous emotional and physical support. It's not the medical care, because doulas don't do any medical care. it's a wellness thing. It's all entwined in the wellness. Everything that I've been learning through the years is all based on a wellness continuum that you have, that you developed.
The Halbert Dunn.
Yes, we know that babies in the womb have to be treated kindly, and so their mothers have to be treated kindly. If the mothers are really stressed out, the babies get those chemicals bathing their brains, and their brains change the way they function. So if we get a mother who's not stressed, then the baby comes out like being welcomed into the world with appropriate birth practices. But if the baby is stressed, the baby is fearful and hyper vigilant and is just always afraid of the world. And so it's just like an animal that's afraid, it strikes out. And so everything links to wellness.
So I was going to ask, I know Marshall Klaus died a few years ago, and I think John Kennel is also dead, but Phyllis was still going at it, and I think she was working on a book. Do you have any knowledge of that? Or I'd like to interview her.
Yes, I think she's working on a book, and she also is representing them at different conferences like the APA conference and of course the Doulas of North America conferences. And she's invited to speak at others. So she, she is now the voice.
Good. Well, I'm going to get her on here for sure. And I know we also talked about ecstatic birth and that you show the video to your nurses. And,
not just ecstatic, but orgasmic.
Orgasmic, that's what I meant to say, yeah.
It's a great video to show people having birth with support and how healthy that is. And so for my nursing students, I usually get 40 to 60 a semester, twice a year, who want the doula training. And I do the doula training with them.
As part of the nursing curriculum.
Yeah, but only maybe a handful to 10 are going to go on and be doulas or work in women's health. The others want it because, first of all, they want to know what this is. And secondly, it gives them a leg up in their maternity course, which is in the next semester after I train them as doulas. So they get the information about the history of medicine and women in labor and birth and what women need in birth, and just, they get a lot of stuff that translates into good patient care anywhere. Raising the oxytocin level. They learn that when they go into a room, they need to raise the oxytocin level. They need to make people feel safe, and they will heal faster that way.
Amen. So now you also mentioned that you first were at UNC and then you transferred to Duke where you're teaching now. And
right.
You actually brought the wellness workbook in there at some point too, I think, and the wellness inventory.
Oh, I was so excited. They were talking in a faculty meeting about we need to introduce wellness. We're always talking about disease and illness, but we have to start with wellness before we move to illness. And I said, I've got the books for you, and I gave them your books, and they adapted that to their curriculum. They had the inventory, the self-inventory. Each student took that, and that was like a final project. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, it's great that you're bridging both worlds, and I don't think we said this in the first segment of my frustration at how the alternative medicine, complementary, now integrative medicine people don't seem to get that birth and prenatal
Yeah.
is a crucial component of so-called integrative alternative medicine. And it's like two different silos. They don't get it. And you do, which is so important. But we got some work ahead of us to spread the word that their infant wellness is crucial.
And now there are lots of nurses out there. I've been at Duke for 6 years, so there are a lot who have graduated with these ideas.
Wonderful. Now, we were talking about Kim's, and I know we mentioned orgasmic birth, and Deb, is it Bonero?
Pascali Bonero.
Which one comes first?
Pascali comes first.
Oh, that's okay.
Think of it as Deb Peanut Butter. That's what we call her.
Yeah, I know. She's doing stuff in Bali with Robin Lim, and who I heard at
she is one of the most creative geniuses I know. She made the film Orgasmic Birth, and so she filmed it and was edited with I think I've forgotten the woman's name, but she's on her credits, and she is fantastic, and then introduced it to the world. And now the orgasmic birth is not hidden in the shadows. It is something that people can look forward to.
And your nursing students get to see it. I checked since our first half, and it's on Vimeo. The preview is free, but then there's a fee for watching it. But the whole film is on Vimeo, and I'll put a link to that in too.
Yes.
And the other person that I want to get on here is good old Ray Davies.
Ray Davies.
She and you were the fun folks that I remember from Kim's meetings. What's
Ray
Ray
is
up
a
to these
mover and
days?
shaker, and she was our administrative person for years, and we didn't have money to pay her. We would, maybe give her some here and there, but she kept us going. She was the backbone of the organization.
What's she up to now? Do you have any contact with her?
She is teaching still. She teaches childbirth education. She trains doulas. She's just, but she also is working with the International Mother Baby Childbirth Organization. She is really invested in that. And that was the spinoff from Kim's. That was the global spinoff where
but that had to do with, I think.
Yeah, they wanted she and Ina May Gaskin and Deborah Pascali Bonaro wanted to go global with Kim's, and we said we would love it if you would go global, but we don't have the administrative resources, we don't have the finances to help you out, but you've got everything we've got. We'll back you 1,000%. And they went ahead and they worked with some department at UNC Chapel Hill that surveyed all these countries about their birth practices and what they felt they needed in a document, just like the Kim's Mother Friendly Childbirth Initiative. They developed the International Mother Baby Childbirth Initiative. And it is a global document that's applicable to the United States. The United States should try to live up to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, there have been incredible people you and I have worked with.
Yeah, it's, I'm so appreciative that that meeting at Mount Madonna Center connected me with so many folks, from Suzanne Arms, who we were actually roommates with Jim Prescott, and we were doing a hot tub one night during the meeting when I said, or she said, wouldn't it be great to get an organization together that did all of the prenatal and birth and postnatal and primal period, all of that, which is what led 4 years later to the alliance that we formed. And it's still going. We had a period of sabbatical when we ran out of money, but then we got a bequest, and now it's funding the project that I'm doing of connected couples, thriving families, and the whole issue of how having babies destroys most marriages and nuclear families, and how to prepare couples for the onslaught of having a kid without a village to help raise them. So there were some other areas that we touched into. I'm trying to remember. It's annoying to have to redo this after.
I know.
But a great spontaneous thing, and then the recording failed. But
yes.
Now you're in North Carolina for what, 10 years now, or?
For 10 years, yes. I was working as a nurse practitioner in Michigan, and got an opportunity to come back to UNC and work at the UNC Family Medicine Center as a women's health nurse practitioner. My husband loved teaching and it was going to take us a while. Michigan was upside down in its finances, and so selling our house was going to be a problem. So we, just agreed that I would go down there and prepare a nest for our future, and he would stay there and help clean out the house. And we drove me down July of 2009, and in December of 2009, he slipped and fell on ice in our driveway in Michigan and died. So, so I was really happy not to be in Michigan in that cold weather anymore. I mean, I was not in a stable mental place. I had PTSD, and so it was good that I was in North Carolina.
Now, the PTSD was from your childhood, and which we talked about earlier. Or
Yes,
did you have other
PTSD appears to be like unresolved trauma, and then finally one smacks you in the head and takes you down. Mm-hmm. And it was my husband's death that did that. Oh. I used acupuncture and grief counseling. I got the grief counseling from a woman who had kicked my tail into being a doula.
Right.
Nancy Chiachi. She and so I felt safe with her, and over a period of time, I was better. And
now the other thing I remember that we covered was your work in Africa. So let's revisit that. Yeah. So recently, in fact, last week I was on planes for 3 days. Wow. Finally, yeah, from Kenya to North Carolina, and then North Carolina to Michigan. Former student of mine who's also women's health oriented, and I went with a family that I had met in the hospital where I teach with one of my students, and they were from Kenya, and I told them I'd been to Cameroon doing some work trying to save women's and infants' lives by getting them assessed prenatally for anemia, diabetes, high blood pressure, so that they could get medical care when they needed it. It's very expensive in Cameroon and Kenya to get this care. So you don't want to go just because you think something might be wrong, even though that's exactly when you should go. And having prenatal groups, setting up prenatal groups to talk about
these issues and the prevention of them and how to take care of them is worth its weight in gold. So we went to Kenya to form these groups, get the leadership picked out, and provide them with the information and the instruments, the tools that they would need to provide this kind of care.
I love the novel diabetes detection tool that
Oh.
you told me about.
Yes, yes. So if we suspect sugar, a high sugar, then it's usually going to come out through the urine. So we have them pee into a jar, set it down on the ground, check it an hour or so later, and if the ants have swarmed it, it's a suggestion that there's sugar in there.
Exactly.
Yes.
Go basic tools.
Yes.
So you're definitely a Renaissance woman, Barbara. I love how you've covered so many areas, and you're just joined the septuagenarians and
Yes.
going strong. As you said, you keep young by keeping up with your students.
Keeping up with my students means that I have to take care of my health. Yes.
And how do you do that? Do you have any?
I work with my physician, and we make decisions together. I get acupuncture regularly, and I take Chinese medicine as well as Western medicine, and of course, nutrition intake, following the Jack Travis recommendations.
I'm not sure what those are, but Yvonne got me into mountain biking, so we get out mountain biking, and I've been doing HIIT, the high intensity interval training, which is the only exercise program I've ever been able to keep up, because it only takes me 12 minutes a couple or 3 times a week. And
oh, wow.
It's more effective than aerobics, which is long and boring, and I could never continue it. And then the intermittent fasting of keto adapting and getting fasting 36 hours a week, one day a week, and limiting my eating to more like 8 or 12 hours, or sometimes 6 hours. So things that apparently they're more physiologic. We didn't evolve on this planet getting 3 squares a day. It was feast and famine, and our bodies have adapted to high carbohydrate diets, and then the evils of fat that were erroneously promoted by the sugar industry back when they hired Ansel Keys to vilify the John Yudkin in England, who was pointing out the evils of sugar. And
yes.
They followed big tobacco and did the same thing with big sugar, and they finally been found out. And so, you had some great parting words, I remember. If you can remember what they were, we can wrap up with that and let you get on with your evening. It's getting late there in Michigan. Appreciate your sticking at it.
Oh, not a problem. Yeah, I wish I could remember those words.
As I recall, it was about trusting your intuition and
yes. Making healthy choices in your pregnancies and your births, in your relationships, and trusting your instincts. So many women have said something like, I knew if I could just get up and squat, I could push this baby out. And then, but the medical people wouldn't let her do that. And I've heard that several times. And so I think trusting our instincts, and having a doula there, of course, for continuous emotional support and physical support, has proven itself time and time again. The research is overwhelming on that one.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Barbara. This has been great, and doing what's the word? My as we said earlier, my memory shelves are overstocked. A recapitulation
yes,
of our.
Yes. We have to go
So,
way deep in our files. We've got so many of them.
so blessings on you and thank you again.